Gotcha. Yeah, that's good. Can you move the dress a little bit? Give me a little movement. There you go. Perfect.
When I look at a picture, the first thing I usually look for subconsciously is the photographer. Where is the photographer? Where is his or her hand on the work? What can I learn from this? And on the one hand, it's just connected to me wanting to learn and improve myself as a photographer. But on the other hand, it really is just curiosity about how things are made and what makes them the way they are that I have for pretty much everything I look at. I like to look at this because I also wonder how much of the photographer should be in an image. Does it make you a good photographer when people can see your hand over it? Or does it matter if people can tell who did it or not? You know, I'm fascinated by documenting, and that's a big part of that too. You know, if you're shooting to document, you probably shouldn't be in the image, right? But can you avoid that? You know, when I think of shooting a model and capturing images for their portfolio, or being hired by someone to photograph models to capture their brand, I often wonder how much of myself is visible in that, and how much should it be visible in that. When people hire you, they hire you because of your eye. And what does that mean? That usually refers to how you capture something, the angles you tend to take, or the finishing touches you'll put on the image after the fact. But because I want to document and capture something real about the other person, I always find myself stuck with this question of how much of me should you see in the picture? Now, of course, that depends on the style of image that you're trying to capture. In the examples I gave working with models, usually people want you to capture them in the way that you do, right? They want to see your distinct eye and approach all over the images. And so you direct and curate the images as best as you can to make them look like other things you've shot, because that's why the client is there, right? That's why the model came to you for the portfolio update. That's why the client hired you to shoot their brand. And then if you're shooting for a magazine, for example, doing something more journalistic, then of course you want to remove yourself a little bit, right? Say you're on assignment to shoot Spike Lee at his home in Brooklyn or wherever he lives. You know, the magazine wants you to show him as he is, to tell the story that they want to tell with it, you know, pair your pictures with some writing. And so if you get too creative with that, you might not be doing the right job for that. Now, if they hired you to shoot Spike Lee for Vanity Fair and they want something creative and interesting to highlight him, then that's a whole different story. Then they want more of your eye. But it's really impossible to hide yourself from the work that you do. And that was something that was really stuck out in my mind when I reviewed and took notes on this shoot that I'm showing footage from here. When I planned for it, I was like, okay, I'll bring in some props and just try to get something interesting, kind of break the mold. I wanted to do this like celebrity styled photo shoot, like if I were shooting something on location for a magazine. And I thought the props could be a cool way to just bring in something out of place that gave some visual interest. And then I was thinking about how all these props were things that I pulled from my home. It was this bird viewing book that a friend told me to buy once. It was a little art piece that my daughter did in school. That was just some random thing she did in elementary school and I thought would look good in a different environment. It was a lighter that I had sitting around somewhere. And then I was thinking, I'm like, oh, you know, it's kind of interesting how through these props, I'm documenting myself. Because while this model is holding them in the picture, when I look back at the pictures, I'll see these little mementos of a certain time in my life. And that way, maybe no one else would know, but I would know, you know, what I was going through and what I was interested in that time. But what stuck with me is that I didn't have to think about it that hard. The idea is that whether or not I was using props that, you know, connected to things that I was doing or interested in at certain times of my life, what I was shooting, where we were shooting, who I was shooting, it's always a documentary of my creative growth and process and my life in general. You know, I go to these places, right? I went to the Rockaway Beach in New York and did this shoot. You know, I'm going to remember doing this, and I'm going to remember other things that were happening in my life when I was doing this. It's an interesting thing to think about because, again, I'm always putting my subject first, and I want to draw things from their lives and connect them to the types of images we want to create, so that way our images have something personal and unique to them, and hopefully that way I can give the models and the actors I work with images that are unlike other things they've shot before, and maybe feel even truer to them than other images they've done before. But that preoccupation with them sometimes makes you think like, I'm not there. And not that I care, but before I got into photography, I used to be a writer. That was what I was pursuing in my life. I wanted to publish a novel. And when you do something like writing, there's so much of yourself that's anything about yourself makes it in there. No one is checking you. You don't have to worry about location, lighting, another person's performance. It's just you write whatever you want to happen in your story. And so there is a part of me that feels like, oh, in photography, I sort of have to erase myself a little bit to highlight this other person. But as I was just laying out here, that's not the case. You know, you're always in it. It's interesting to hear advice like steal like an artist, right? Borrow from your inspirations, all these other things. Because every time you do that, not only does it help you do something creative, but it becomes a little artifact of a time in your life. And that's something that I'm learning to appreciate about what I get to do that I wasn't really aware of before, because I would think of illustrators and writers as people that really put their art, or musicians, you know, as people who really put their art entirely, or themselves entirely into their art, whereas I have to, you know, document people for their own purposes and other things. But not that it matters, because I still love doing what I do, and I love highlighting other people because I don't like thinking about myself too much. But I realize that there's more control and more, even honestly, more to be aware of sometimes than I was giving myself credit for. Even though I may think I'm doing a job and someone's asking me to shoot them wearing a certain thing for their portfolio so they could book other work, my sensibilities show through in that, right? And so it is important for us to be aware of our eye, of the way we color the work we do, and not literally, you know, with tones and all that, but the way our perspectives are communicating our view of the world. If there's any encouragement here, besides just this rambling and thinking about the way we're always in our work, whether we like it or not, I think it would be to look at our work critically in that way and wonder, what are we communicating with the stuff we have? These things are communicated so quickly, and I don't think sometimes people realize how much of what they do and say is communicated immediately to an audience. So I'd be surprised to hear, you know, what you guys notice about your work and what people notice, or if there's been any times where somebody noticed something that you never thought about, whether it's about the way you use color or what types of subjects you choose, etc. So some food for thought. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what approaches you have in your work, what about yourself is surprising you and how it shows up in your work. And I'll see you guys in the next one.